academia than in the heartland of America, because these values are far more entrenched and advanced in those areas. And where these values are deeper, Israel's problem will be greater. Now, our goal is to keep this from spreading. I do not believe we will ever reach and change the minds of people at that core. It's a lost cause. What we have to focus on are those progressives and liberals for whom the arguments of that core resonate. And we have to present a much stronger case. That's the challenge that we face. Now, I don't think rights-based diplomacy is going to do it. I don't think if you tell a 20-year-old liberally inclined student on a college campus what happened in 1948, who started what, when, that this is going to solve our problem. But I do believe that we are far from helpless in waging this campaign, because we are on the right side of many issues, the main issues that are the concerns of those liberals and those progressives, whether in Europe, in America, in other parts of the world. The problem is that we are constantly on the defensive. Those core issues, like women's rights, gay rights, religious persecution, political freedom, these core issues are never put front and center. Because what's happening to Israel is a campaign is being waged against us, and we are responding to those campaigns. We are responding either aggressively or passively, but we are always on defense. Think about the last time you saw an offensive campaign. And I have some background in political campaigns, and I can tell you that people run negative campaigns all the time. You know why? Because they work. That's why they run those campaigns. And if you don't run a negative campaign, you decide, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to respond to those allegations against me. I'm just going to stay positive. Then your friends and supporters will admire you on that night when you've declared your opponent the winner. But you won't win. And Israel cannot afford to lose. A negative campaign, massively funded, is being directed against Israel. And we are constantly in the dock. In order for us to change this dynamic, Israel, friends of Israel, supporters of Israel, are going to have to start fighting back. And fighting back, not defending themselves more vocally, not screaming about issues after the person didn't hear it the first time, but actually taking the fight to your enemy's backyard. And they've got major problems in their backyard on the issues that progressives and liberals care the most about. As I said, the state of women's rights, which I believe is the single most important issue. The single most important issue, which will actually be the hope for the entire region, will be if women in this region have rights. Gay rights, religious persecution, political dissent, you name it. Now, I'll show you a real-world example of how it worked. It wasn't directed by Israel. It just happened. Ahmadinejad said, for many years, Israel should be wiped off the map. Okay, we cared. A few other people cared. He said the Holocaust didn't happen. We cared. A few other people cared. And even a few more cared about that. When he went to Colombia, and he said there's no homosexuals in Iran, all of a sudden they said, wow, this guy's a Meshuggah. He's really crazy. I suppose there's no homosexuals in Iran because they kill all the homosexuals in Iran. Look what happened recently in the election in Iran. Now, people have been working to raise awareness of the dangers of a nuclear-armed Iran for a long time. And had those efforts not been waged, then people would care as much about Iran's nuclear weapons, or potential nuclear weapons, than they do of North Korea's. People are concerned about Iran's nuclear weapons program. But look what happened to concern, you can see this in public opinion surveys. Look what happened with concern about Iran when Neda, that woman in Iran, was shot and she was in the streets. That immediately changed perceptions around the world about what that regime is all about. And more people supported tough action across the board against that regime, because all of a sudden, audiences that were not convinced of these dangers began to be convinced. So the challenge that we face is that the left must understand that Islamic fundamentalism poses the greatest danger to the values they most cherish. That's the challenge. If you're going to repel this assault on Israel's legitimacy, that's our challenge. The left must understand those dangers in the way that the right, I think, has already internalized it. And I think here we have a great ally in this struggle. And that is the people of these societies. Bernard Lewis said he was very hopeful about what was happening within these societies. I think that is indeed the greatest source of hope. Because the people in those societies are struggling for their freedom all the time. Very rarely does anyone pay attention to them. After the elections in Iran, for a brief moment, somebody was paying attention. But day after day, there are people who risk their lives for freedom and rights throughout this world, throughout this region. And nobody's paying attention. So what our challenge has to be is to try every way we can, any way we can, to put their issues on the agenda, to make sure that they have a hearing, to make sure that the New York Times will spend a tenth of the print talking about what is happening within the societies, many societies in this region, where these rights are violated with impunity, as they spend focusing on the single democracy in the Middle East. When that happens, you will see a remarkable change. And you will not see people protesting against Israel, because they will understand that we are on their side in this great struggle. Now, that is a tall order, I agree. But if we have a conceptual shift, and if we understand that this must be the focus, that by focusing on the worst human rights abusers on the planet, by saying unabashedly what the regime in Iran is, by talking about what's happening in North Korea, by talking about what's happening in Sudan, and by demanding that this gets the coverage it deserves, and by doing everything we can to give it the coverage that it deserves, and to focus our creative energies at this, I believe that we can put this issue on the agenda, and I think that slowly but surely those forces who are working against us will shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink some more, and Israel will have built a very strong coalition for the defense of the Jewish state. Thank you.